Flow State Mastery, an exclusive chat with Sneha Mandala on beating burnout. Dive into the world of flow state with Sneha Mandala, the advocate for effortless work culture and sustainable peak performance. Discover tips to conquer burnout as Sneha delves into maintaining productivity while preserving well being. Join us for a conversation filled with insights, strategies, and peak performance wisdom to create a balanced and high performing work environment. Welcome to the Wellness Driven Life Show, where you're about to go on a wellness driven ride. Welcome to the Wellness Driven Life Show. Let me share a little bit about the guests that we have here today. Sneha Mandala, a seasoned global keynote speaker and advocate for effortless work culture and sustainable peak performance, has extensive experience optimizing productivity while mitigating burnout for both employees and entrepreneurs. With milestones like a TEDx Reno talk garnering over 110,000 views and recognition as a professional coach by the International Coach Federation, she leads the charge in redefining success by making productivity effortless. Please help me welcome to our stage Ms. Sneha Mandala. Welcome.
Hi, April. Thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to have you share your expertise, because what is the number one cause of illness, of leaving jobs? It's burnout. So I'm excited to have this conversation. Let's get started by sharing a little bit more about yourself so the audience can get to know you more.
Absolutely. So, my journey started when I moved to the United States about a decade ago. My background is engineering. I'm from India. And I actually came here for my master's degree in industrial engineering. And way before I even graduated, I got offered a great job, a pretty glamorous job, I'd like to think. I was hired by a huge multinational national corporation, and my job was to go to all of these different places across the country and install robots, make sure they get integrated into the operations. My parents back home were super, super proud of me. And you'd think this girl had everything going really great for herself, but that wasn't the case, April. Less than a year into my job, I started experiencing what I call as Sunday dreads. Not just the Monday blues, the Sunday dreads, the deep, heavy feeling that would set into me on Sunday afternoons because I'm dreading the week ahead. And I kept experiencing mini doses of this feeling every single time I would log in for work. That was my journey that led me to think, well, my career can be feeling like this. I need to get myself out of that heavy, dark place and make my work life more meaningful, more colorful, brighter. So that kickstarted my journey into researching more about burnout and what can we do in order to prevent it, lessen it, but also not compromise on results. Being an engineer, results are really important to me.
And so let's talk a little bit about that, because I love your wording, that your description of Sundays and that afternoon dread and how you're just kind of moping around, which isn't a fun way to experience the time when you're supposed to be recuperating, right? And so that's a red flag, definitely a red flag as to something isn't right here, something isn't working here. So what are some of the ways that you talk about how to overcome that feeling and get out of it?
Yeah, first of all, I did have to figure this out not only for myself, but a majority of the American workforce. Because if hand on your heart, you're able to say that, yes, I do feel fulfilled, I do feel engaged, I do feel committed at work today, chances are that two out of three are not feeling that way today. So I decided to turn to experts, and by experts, I mean I went to the most successful and the most popular leaders within my company, outside my company, and I asked them all one question. And I didn't ask them, hey, how do you deal with burnout? Or do you even feel stress at work? I, in fact, asked them one positive question. I asked them, when does your work feel effortless? And the responses I got were pretty interesting. Most of the leaders described this effortlessness as a peak experience. And they said that sometimes they're solo when they are hit with this experience. Sometimes they are working with like minded people. But the common aspect was that they produced their best work and felt their best during this peak experience when their work felt effortless, when they were putting in the effort, but it didn't feel like work to them. So my job was to find out what are the common denominators in all of their responses and how could I apply that to my own career? How can
Mm.
I make my day at my job just a little bit more effortless. And I didn't stop there. Now it's my mission to make sure that I'm reaching out to leaders, and I do a lot of leadership training, workshops, a lot of keynotes. And I just want every employee to feel like their work is a little bit more effortless tomorrow than it is today.
I love that. And so oftentimes that's said so many different ways, right? Flow state being one of them. What are some of the things where we just really enjoy what we're doing? And it's that flow state, effortlessness. It's just moving through and in this blissful sort of state. And whereas we don't always get that, but it can come very commonly. Artists are ones that they dive into that very easily, right? They go into
Mhm.
that flow state. Also, athletes, professional athletes, they can get into that flow state quite easily. So, how do you create that where it's more of a mundane in, day out sort of experience with your job functions?
Absolutely. That's the biggest question I get asked. Hey, I'm an assembly line worker. I have to do the same thing all day long. How do I get into flow? And I love that you're so educated around flow. Yes, it's talked about most often with sports professionals or creative professionals, but I'd argue it's a universal concept. I can guarantee that your listeners, we all have experienced this at some point, if not at work, perhaps outside of work. So I just want to share a little bit about what it feels like to be in flow, and then we can talk about how do we get into flow on command. So flow state feels pretty flowy to be put in a very short manner. You experience a sense of timelessness and a sense of selflessness. Let me
Mm,
dig a little bit deeper.
I like that.
Timelessness, yeah, timelessness is when time feels distorted. 2 minutes go by like 2 hours, or 2 hours can go by like 2 minutes. Selflessness is when your identity, your ego disappears. It's not about you or you winning anymore, it's more about the task on hand. You're so absorbed in an activity that what happens at the end result at the end doesn't really matter to you. It's just about you being so grounded in the present moment, you thoroughly enjoying, thoroughly absorbed in that activity and giving it your all. That's what a flow state is. That's when
Love
work
that.
feels effortless. Yeah, you are putting in the work, but it doesn't feel like work. You're not doing and struggling and grinding it out. You're just being. So being
Mm.
versus doing. So that's what
Sneha,
a flow state feels like.
Y yeah, I feel like, if we could always just blissfully be in that state, That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
But
but
we
that's the
have to.
fundamental problem. Exactly. You can't get into flow on command. It's like I can't just sit at my desk and say, you know what, I'm gonna get into flow right now and I'm gonna crank out 10 articles. It just doesn't happen that way. Even if you were to sit in a
Um,
complete box of like an isolated box, if you will, April, zero distractions. You don't have your phone near you, like there's no distractions. You still have those internal triggers, the internal distractors, your nagging self doubt, your procrastination, your tendency for perfectionism that will always stop you from getting into flow.
yeah,
So
monkey brain.
yeah, monkey brain, jumping from one thing, one shiny object to another. So, how do you get into flow on command? Remember all the interviews that I conducted, the common denominators? Actually, there are two factors that I found out from my interviews and my research that consistently create the conditions of flow. Now, if you have ever picked up a self help book, if you have ever attended any leadership training, you've heard of this first factor 100 times. Do what you love, have passion, you'll get into flow, success will follow, right? And that is true to a pretty good extent. Drive is a primary factor to get into flow. Sure, even if you're doing things in a repetitive manner, if you can find a way to do more of the things that you love, to add just a little bit more drive to your work life, then that can help in a significant manner to contribute to those conditions of flow. Now, where people get this wrong is that doing what you love alone is not enough. April, you and I, like we work in this industry, we all know of people who do what they love and they're still burning out every single day. So what's missing? Because flow feels energizing. Flow doesn't feel exhausting. Flow doesn't
Yeah.
feel like you have completely exhausted yourself at the end of the day. Flow feels like I got such a great day of work in. I'm ready for more. You want to go out and have dinner with the family? Sure. You want to go hang out with your friends? Sure. So it feels very energizing. Flow is the only time when you're producing your best work, when your performance is peaking, but at the same time, your stress is at its least because you're feeling great about what you're doing. So, doing what you love sometimes doesn't help that because guess what? April, if you are a world famous artist and I'm your billionaire Indian client, okay, I come to you and I say, April, I want you to capture my like this particular memory that I'm very fond of. I want you to capture that landscape. And you are an artist that is known who's known for your oil paintings. Okay. And then you're like, sure, Sneha, I'll get it done. I'll get you a masterpiece in 10 days. But I come to you on day two, April, and I ask you, you know what? I don't want this painting in oil medium. Can you use watercolors? I know you're trained in that. April, come on, please, can you use watercolor? Now, here's my question. Do you think you're going to produce a masterpiece? April.
If I'm not enjoying what I'm using,
So you're still doing what you love. You're still painting. You're still fulfilling your client's dreams. But I just put a restriction on you.
mm,
I just restricted the way you love to do it.
this is a very good point. So, when we have restrictions, we don't feel free or open or comfortable, or maybe even to go as far as safety aspect. We don't feel just good or at home or comfortable enough in order to relax enough to go into flow state.
Oh my goodness, I can't stress on this enough. Doing what you love alone is never enough. You need to be able to do it in the way you love to do it, in your most primal, natural, raw state. I
Hmm.
call it
You know,
authenticity. So
uh,
drive and authenticity.
that makes a
That's
lot of
what will
sense.
create flow.
Sneha, what it reminds me of and what it makes me think of is when you consider some of our greatest writers in history, when you learn about their background, their personal lives, their history, they oftentimes went to a private area to do their writing, a home away from home, a cabin in the mountains or somewhere where they could get into a creative state outside of all of the noise, somewhere where they're very comfortable and confident in creating.
That's true. That for me is the library. Actually, I was at the library on Monday because I knew I was going to have this meeting today. So otherwise, it would be usually Wednesdays that I hang out at the library. I just pack a lunchbox, turn my phone off, and just show up at the library and don't move until it's 6 p.m. And
Hmm.
I'm just writing. So that is my safe space that enables me to get into flow. But also, what's more important is, again, even if you are in a black box of sorts, you are in complete isolation. How do you make your inner noise die down? It's not just the external noise. The inner noise will go away when you have that drive and authenticity going for you. Yes, I am driven to write 10 articles today at the library. And yes, I am doing it in the way I love to do it. I'm not trying to fit into a template or a mold or follow a format.
Mm.
I'm just doing it in my authentic style.
So, really feeling the freedom to be able to be who you are and the circumstances, surroundings, the people, the culture, all of those things fitting in, not having to fit into like what you mentioned, a mold of some sort, but really just being free to be.
Yeah, and a lot of work cultures really ignore this aspect because they're like, oh, we put great people in great roles. They are super driven to do their job, but they're still burning out. They're still leaving. You still got turnover issues. So, guess what's happening? They don't feel like they can be themselves. They don't feel like they are contributing their unique fingerprint, their unique DNA to your company's mission, to your company's work, to your company's product and services. So guess what? When you don't care about me, when I'm replaceable, why should I care about you?
That is more of a common denominator more often than not. So, Sneha, you teach this, you speak on this, and so I would love to know a little bit more about what that looks like in your day in and day out. We're going to move into our first commercial, and when we come back, we'll talk about that. Stay tuned. Are you ready to take control of your ride to wellness? Rev up with Driven Living. Visit www.drivenliving.com and buckle up for a journey. Get exclusive access to our Wellness Driven Life Show guest portal, where you can dive deep into the minds of our esteemed guests. Sign up for our newsletter and get insider scoops on these distinguished personalities. It's like having a backstage pass to their life-changing wisdom. But that's not all. You'll also receive a free hug. You heard me right, a free hug. An enlightening ebook from the Driven Living team. Discover the science-backed benefits of hugging yourself. It's a fill-up for your wellness tank. Because at Driven Living, we believe in fueling your journey to wellness, both physically and psychologically. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.drivenliving.com today. Welcome back, everyone. Here with Sneha Mandala, and I would
You
love
look like
to
a
know.
Vogue model in the commercial. You look
Oh,
great.
thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Sneha, you talk about burnout and being able to enter into a flow state and what it takes to get there. And you also are a global keynote speaker on this subject, as well as you've done a TEDx Reno TED Talk on it with many, many views. So what we're talking about, bringing in authenticity, and one of my favorites, being the CEO of Driven Living, is drive and having to have that authentic drive to meet overall peak performance and productivity. So let's share a little bit more with the audience about what is that like for you traveling abroad and teaching this, and what are the responses that you're getting back?
Absolutely. So just this morning, you won't believe it. I was up at 4:30, did my hair and makeup, and I spoke with a bunch of CEOs and business owners in Malta remotely. And for me, that's what a day-to-day looks like. I get requests for leadership training or sometimes keynotes, and then either try and get them done virtually. If it's out of country, then if it's within country, I'd like to always be there in person. You always make a bigger impact in person because they see you, they know you, they can feel your presence as a real person. And that adds a lot of weight, a lot of value to your message. And to answer your question about the responses that I've been getting, well, the first thing I open up all of my keynotes or workshops, whatever I do, I open up by saying hard work's overrated. And then you see jaws dropping all around the room, whether it's virtual or in person,
Yep.
because that's the culture that we have been raised in. That's what our mamas and dadas did, and that's what we are doing too. It's all about that hustle culture. It's all about that hard work and grinding it out and struggling, and success comes to those who struggle. I was raised that way too. I mean, I come from a culture where hard work is just worshipped. um, but studies show that after a certain point, hard work doesn't lead to better results. In fact, it leads to decreased productivity, decreased results, decreased quality of work and quality of life. So why are we chasing after longer, harder hours at work? If there are smarter ways to get things done, there are more effortless ways to get this done. If there are ways to get into flow when you're getting your things done, then why not? So that's the first response I get, like just jaws dropping, because I'm standing there talking about stuff that probably they have not considered before. Not that I'm talking about anything new, I'm just giving them a fresh perspective. They know how important work life balance is. It's just
Yeah.
that the practical aspect is missing, especially for leaders, because, hey, I know you're not running a daycare. You're not going to let employees do whatever they want, however they want to. That's not what I'm asking you to do. You want the results. I'm telling you, you can get the results by making sure that your employees are in flow and they're not being stressed out or burnt out. Guess what? Productivity and mental health don't have to be mutually exclusive. And that's when they start opening up to the concept a little bit. I know there's still a lot more work to be done where flow becomes more commonplace at work. And just like you said, you hear a lot more of it, or in the creative profession world or in the sports world. But my mission is to bring it more to work for people like you and me.
I agree. It truly is just a shift and tweak in perspective. And until we have that shift in perspective, we can't, figure out ideas and take action to doing things a little bit differently, right? And so share a little bit more about your background and how you came across really experiencing intense burnout. What was it like for you on an emotional and spiritual aspect? And how do you bring that to the forefront of what you lead others into?
I do believe that a strong message is something that comes from your core, or something that you truly deeply experienced. And that's what I feel like makes me relatable. You know, someone who is experiencing burnout. And I guess just addressing such a difficult topic upfront by sharing my own experience of burning out and how I came out on the other end and I'm doing this deep work in this space helps me relate to them way stronger. So that is where I come from.
I agree with you. The relation piece is really key. I believe strongly that through us telling our stories and our experiencing and being able to evoke that emotion within us is how we make the greatest impact. That's how we all get to say, me too. And it inspires us to want to take action to improving ourselves. And part of the issues with what we're all facing, again, burnout is a great choice of word. Stress is a major choice. I often have said stress is the number one killer. And so when we talk about that and going even deeper, it's tied to emotion and all of the things. If we're unfulfilled with what we're doing day in and day out, it is going to continue to build up. And through that, it creates dis-ease, right? And eventually it catches up with all of us if we don't know how to navigate that in the best ways. So, some of the key things that you've mentioned so far is, having the drive to want to do something and being authentic in that drive. And so, can you share a couple of instances that you experienced this? Can you explain what that was like, what you were doing? What was it like for you personally?
I'll share an example. So, for me to get into my flow, I actually left my engineering career behind. So, the initial story that I
Yeah,
was talking about during my intro, and hey, that's not what I'm asking you or the audience to do. Like, it doesn't have to be that extreme. It can be that extreme when you are stuck in a place that is giving you absolutely no options for flow at all. And that's where I was. So I got into my next job, and I worked there for about 5 years, and I felt like um, I was actually doing really well. So for me, it just changed the narrative of my career because I was just waking up every day looking forward to working. Great people, great impact, great responsibilities. And that's when I shifted to human resources, actually. So learning and development specifically. So everything's going great, and I'm like, yeah, I'm finally in my flow. I'm not feeling burnt out. I want to preserve the situation as much as possible, right? So a few months into my job, my VP calls me and she's like, Sneha, you're doing so great. I have some feedback for you. And I'm like, oh no, what's this going to be about? I really want to keep my job here. So she tells me that, you know what? I don't hear you speaking up too much in our team calls. And I was just stumped. And I definitely wanted to keep my drive going, my job going. So I spent the next few weeks trying to be someone I was not. I may not come across like that, but actually, I am an extreme introvert. So my natural state is to just lean back and listen and just absorb everything that is being said in a meeting. So the next few weeks, April, I tried to be someone whom I was not. I was trying to chime in, speak up, even when it was absolutely not necessary to. And guess what? It felt exhausting.
yeah,
You're trying to hide or change or erase a part of your identity at
I
work.
agree.
That's wasted energy. That's energy that could have been redirected into creating something meaningful, something beautiful to the company at your job. So when I realized this, I went back to my VP and I said, you know what? I I have to admit this is not my natural state of operating. I'm an introvert, that's my personality type. And just because I'm not speaking up doesn't mean I'm disengaged in the call. It's just my natural response in a
Mm,
group environment. But here's my deal. I promise you that when I do have something to share that can change the direction of the meeting, that can change the direction and where the decision is headed, I promise you, and you have to trust me on this, I will be the strongest voice in that meeting. And
mm.
thankfully, my
I love
VP
that.
Yeah. And thankfully, my VP agreed. She understood. In fact, we all kind of did an assessment of our personality styles. So that was nice, trying to understand each other at a deeper, more meaningful level. But my question is this: how many leaders out there are trying to make copies of themselves on their team?
Hmm. Good
How
question.
many? Yeah, how many leaders out there are instead trying to create a psychologically safe environment for people like me to go up to them and say, you know what? I'm not operating in my zone of genius here. That's not my
Mm.
strength. You know what? That's not my work style or preference. You know what? I don't see how my core values are showing up in what I'm doing. Help me understand here. Or are you creating that kind of environment for your people?
Those are all really good questions, and it's easy to fall into that when you have stepped into managerial or leadership positions where you feel that everyone should just be maybe a little robotic like you, because if it works for you, then it should work for everyone else, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people get put in leadership positions because they excel in what they do, and nothing really wrong with that. But to think that there's only one way to get to point B from point A, that's just silly. I always encourage leaders to give their people the what and the why, what needs to be done and why it needs to be done, and they will come up with a way to do the how. They will figure out a way, and you're
Mm.
gonna be there. You're gonna be guiding them along the way. We're trying to micromanage and trying to say that there's only one way to get to point B. That's just silly.
Sneha, you are, encouraging other people to look at things differently, to have another perspective on these things. But what are you specifically most excited about creating?
I'm I'm excited about, and I am already in the process of it. I'm excited about leaders and employees leaving the room where I speak and think about their work just a little differently. Why am I struggling here? Why does this feel so heavy? Why does this feel like I'm swimming upstream? And that for me is a win because that realization, that self awareness is going to kickstart a journey of, all right, what can I do to make this feel more effortless? Why am I missing my flow here? What's missing? Is it drive? Is it authenticity? So that for me is a considerable win. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
That's wonderful. I want to make sure everyone knows where to find you. So I've had it displayed here on the screen, trickled in throughout for those of you watching. And for those of you listening in, visit www.snehamandala.com. Easy peasy is also in the description below. I would love to know, Sneha, what are some of the things that you do on a daily basis that really help you maintain your overall well being?
Slow living, that's like a big thing for me. You want to get into flow, you want to understand what drives you, what makes you feel authentic in life. You've got to create the space for it first. If you're always in rush mode, if you're always trying to check things off a to-do list, you'll never create that space for yourself where you can get into flow. So, a few things that I would like to share with the listeners and the viewers about slow living is you forget the concept of time. And if that's not possible every day, if that's not possible the entire day, at least for pockets of time, you don't check the clock at all. You're just in your element, in your being. You're grounded in the present moment. And the second principle that I have to consistently remind myself of is do something where the result doesn't really matter to you. That way you're priming yourself to again live in the now. You're in the now, where it's not about the result, but it's about how you're feeling, what you're doing, how you're being in the present moment.
Those are beautiful tips. And you're right, it's consistent work. It's easier said than done, but I think the more that we continue to work on that, the easier
Yeah.
it gets. Sneha, it's been amazing to have you on the Wellness Driven Life Show. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom with our audience here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, April. On a parting note, I just want to remind everyone that I did some math, and turns out that you spend almost 100,000 hours at work in your lifetime.
Wow.
That's
Oh,
equivalent to 11 full years of your life. Those could be 11 years you could be smiling, feeling fulfilled, feeling at peace with yourself, or struggling, grinding it out, hustling through them. It's your choice to make.
we all have the choice. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And
Thank you
thank
so much
you.
for having me, April.
You're welcome. You're welcome. My pleasure. And thank you so much to our audience, because without you, the show wouldn't be possible. So thank you so much. Goodbye for now, and we will see you next time.